Welcome to Monk's Temple. Find your posture, wherever you are. Feel the weight of your body settling. Notice the sounds that drift to you. In this simple act of arrival, you have already begun. Our journey starts not with a battle against loneliness, but with a curious question. What if that ache of isolation is not a flaw, but a profound, if painful, reminder? A signal pointing you back to a truth you have always known but somehow forgot. That you are, and have always been, fundamentally connected. The Buddhist teachings on Sangha, or spiritual community, are often pictured as monks in robes. But its deepest meaning is far more intimate. It is the truth of interconnection itself. Loneliness is the feeling of that truth being obscured. So we won't fight the feeling. We'll listen to it. And through that listening, we'll rediscover a sense of belonging that doesn't depend on external circumstances, but on recognizing the internal and eternal fabric of reality. Let's begin with a story. Imagine a man named Leo, stranded in a vast airport during a storm-delayed layover. His phone was dead. For hours, he was adrift in a sea of people, each in their own bubble. The loneliness was a physical tightness in his chest. He tried to read, but the words blurred. He watched families reunite and friends laugh, each scene sharpening his sense of separation. Then, his gaze settled on an elderly couple sharing a bench. They weren't talking. They were simply sitting side by side, hands loosely clasped, watching the rain streak the panoramic windows. Their silence wasn't empty, it was deep, comfortable, full. In their quiet companionship, Leo saw a different kind of connection, one built not on chatter, but on shared presence. They were a calm island in the chaotic terminal. And as he witnessed their peace, something in him softened. He wasn't alone with his loneliness anymore. He was sharing a moment of human tenderness, even from a distance. That couple, without ever knowing it, created a tiny field of Sangha that expanded to include him. Connection, he realized, isn't always something you join. Sometimes, it's something you witness, and in the witnessing, you become part of its quiet resonance. If this perspective, finding connection in unexpected quiet, feels like a door opening, consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. It's a way to walk through that door together, exploring these landscapes of mindful connection. To understand this, we must look at the engine of loneliness. From a Buddhist lens, its fuel is a misunderstanding called anatman, or not-self. We operate under a powerful illusion, that we are a solid, separate, independent I inside a bag of skin. This I feels lacking, so it reaches into the world to grasp what it thinks will complete it, approval, affection, companionship. But this very grasping reinforces the feeling of separation. It's like a wave in the ocean believing it is only its crest, desperately trying to cling to other waves for stability, while fearing the ocean beneath it. The wave's true nature is the ocean. Your true nature is this vast, interconnected field of existence. The ache of loneliness is the poignant, homesick feeling of the wave for the water it has never truly left. Let me offer a new metaphor. Imagine a single light bulb in a dark room. It feels solitary, its light ending at the walls. This is the lonely self. Now, imagine that room is suddenly revealed to be inside a vast, endless power grid. Wires connected to every other light, to the power source, to the engineers who built it, to the miners who extracted the copper. Its light is not its own. It is a manifestation of the entire network. Its very glow is proof of connection. Your consciousness, your life, is that light. Loneliness is the temporary belief that the grid does not exist. Our work is to trace the wires of connection, to see how your existence is fed by countless others, your thoughts shaped by language you didn't invent, your body sustained by a planet you did not create. You are a shining node in a living network. The feeling of disconnection is a thought, not the truth. This leads to a powerful psychological insight. We often approach loneliness as a problem of social skills or circumstances. If only I had more friends, a partner, a different job. But this keeps us on the surface. The Buddhist framework invites us deeper, to address the foundational belief in separation itself. When you start to loosen the grip of the isolated I, your relationship to loneliness transforms. It becomes less of a terrifying void and more of a signal, a gentle nudge to remember the network. This is profoundly freeing. It means you can cultivate connection from the inside out, by tending to your perception of reality itself. How do we start? With a simple, actionable practice rooted in this wisdom. It's called the web of support meditation. Right now, think of one object you can see or feel. Your coffee cup. Feel its weight. Now, trace its origins back. Consider the hands that placed it in your cupboard. The truck that delivered it. The factory worker who molded it. The miner who dug the clay. The sun that warmed the earth that held the clay. In less than a minute, you have connected yourself to hundreds of lives, to geological time, to the sun itself. You are held in a web of astonishing complexity. Do this daily with any object, a piece of fruit, a book, the water from your tap. This isn't just positive thinking. It is a disciplined retraining of perception, a direct experience of praditya samutpada, dependent origination, the Buddha's teaching that nothing exists in isolation. You are literally deconstructing your loneliness by reconstructing your world as the interconnected miracle it truly is. Let's continue. We've seen that loneliness thrives on the story of a separate self. To move beyond it, we must practice a new kind of seeing. This is where Buddhist wisdom becomes a practical tool. We will learn to shift our attention from the inner narrative of isolation to the outer reality of constant, silent relationship. You are never, in truth, alone. You are perpetually in conversation with the world. Our work is to learn the language of that conversation. Think of your mind as a radio. Loneliness is what you hear when you're tuned to a single, repetitive station, the one playing, the song of me and my lack. The static of isolation. But what if you simply reached over and turned the dial? Other stations are broadcasting. The station of sensory presence. The station of reciprocal giving. The station of shared endeavor. They are always on the air. Your practice is not to destroy the radio, but to become a skilled listener, capable of choosing your frequency. The Buddha's path is about gaining mastery over your inner instruments. This is the mastery of attention. Let's ground this with an original, actionable practice. I call it the anchor points exercise. Wherever you are right now, identify 5 points of tangible, non-human contact. 1. The pressure of your body against the chair. 2. The texture of fabric on your skin. 3. The air moving in and out of your nostrils. 4. A sound entering your ears. 5. An object your eyes can rest upon. Now, for just 1 minute, move your attention slowly from point to point. Chair. Fabric. breath, sound, sight. Do not analyze. Just feel the contact, the connection. You are in a dynamic, physical dialogue with your environment. This simple exercise pulls you out of the story in your head and into the fact of relationship in your body. It proves, immediately, that you are not an isolated mind trapped in a shell. You are a sensory being in an ongoing exchange. This is micro-Sangha. This is your foundation. Now, a story. Clara worked in a large, open-plan office, surrounded by people yet feeling profoundly unseen. Her loneliness was a quiet hum beneath the fluorescent lights. One week, a mandate came down, no internal email for questions sitting within 20 feet, you had to walk and ask. Clara dreaded it. Her first walk was to Sam in accounting. She asked her dry question about a budget code. But as Sam answered, she noticed the framed photo on his desk. Not of people, but of an intricate, half-built Lego castle. That's amazing, Clara said, genuinely surprised. Sam's face lit up. Thanks. It's my weekend project. It's got over 3,000 pieces. For 90 seconds, they talked about Lego. Not about work. Not about their personal lives. About the click of plastic bricks, the focus it requires, the satisfaction of a finished turret. That tiny exchange became a pivot. Clara started noticing other islands of identity in the sea of workstations. The propagated plant on a colleague's desk, the cycling helmet on another's shelf. Her walks became scavenger hunts for these human details. She didn't make deep friends. But she built a web of micro-connections, small, specific, and real. She was no longer moving through an anonymous landscape. She was navigating a community of individuals, each with a small, visible inner world. The humming loneliness faded because she had changed her frequency. She stopped broadcasting, "I am alone," and started receiving, "Here is another person," with a passion for Lego. She practiced what Buddhism calls right effort, the effort to cultivate wholesome states. In this case, the wholesome state was curious, other-focused attention. This leads to a profound psychological shift, from consumer to contributor. Loneliness often feels like a state of lack, putting you in a position of needing to consume social validation. This is draining and often repelling. The alternative is to step, however slightly, into the role of a contributor. You contribute your attention. You contribute a moment of genuine curiosity. You contribute a silent wish for someone's well-being. This is the practice of metta, or loving kindness, directed at the world around you in real time. Let me illustrate with another story. Elijah walked his dog every evening in his neighborhood, usually lost in his own thoughts. One night, he decided on a silent practice. As he passed each house, he would simply think, "May you be safe. May you be at ease." He didn't know the people inside. He didn't imagine their lives. He just directed a simple, general goodwill toward the structure that sheltered them. At first, it felt artificial. But within a week, something shifted. The houses stopped being anonymous boxes. They became vessels of human life, each holding its own universe of joy and struggle. His walks were no longer solitary. They were a quiet, moving meditation of blessing. He was contributing a subtle energy of care into his environment. And in doing so, his own sense of isolation melted. He felt part of a neighborhood, a protector of its peace. He had created a one-person Sangha of goodwill, and in that creation, he belonged. This is your second tool: become a silent benefactor. Offer a wish for peace to the stranger in the grocery line. Send a thought of thanks to the bus driver. Your contribution is invisible, but it changes your own heart. It reinforces your role as an active, caring node in the network, not a passive, stranded one. You are practicing interconnectedness. We've now begun the act of retraining, tuning your radio to frequencies of sensory presence and silent contribution. In the next part, we'll address the heavy baggage we carry. The past stories and future fears that block these simple, present-moment connections. Let's continue. Now we turn to the most stubborn layer of loneliness, the personal myth. This is the deep story you've built about who you are in relation to others. I'm the outsider. I'm too intense. I'm not enough. This story feels like your truth, your identity. But in the framework of the Buddhist teaching, it is a construct, a collection of thoughts and memories you have mistaken for a self. This myth is a filter. It tints every interaction, making you see rejection where there is neutrality, and indifference where there might be simple human busyness. To move toward true Sangha, we must learn to put this filter down, even for moments at a time. We must meet the present without the heavy book of our past in our hands. First, understand the mechanism. When you feel lonely, your mind goes on a search for why. It almost always reaches for the most familiar, most deeply carved neural pathway, your core wound. This is not wisdom, it's habit. It's the mind's lazy way of making sense of pain. The Buddha taught about avijja, or ignorance, ignoring the true nature of reality. Here, the ignorance is taking this habitual story as ultimate truth, instead of seeing it as a conditioned, transient thought pattern. Your loneliness is real. The story explaining it is optional. Let me explain with a new metaphor. Imagine you are wearing a pair of glasses with dark, scratched lenses. These are your lonely self glasses. You've worn them so long you've forgotten they're on. Through them, the world looks dim, unfriendly, and you look separate at its center. A person smiles at you, but through the scratches, it looks like a smirk. An invitation arrives, but the dark tint makes it seem like an obligation. You think, see, the world is cold. But the flaw is in the lens, not the world. The practice is, moment by moment, to remember you are wearing glasses. And then, to have the courage to take them off, even just to clean them, and to look with your naked eyes. What do you see without the story? Maybe just a person smiling. Maybe just text on a screen. The raw data is always less charged, less personal, and far more workable than the story-laden interpretation. Let's ground this with an original story. Amir was an artist who believed his story was, "I'm too sensitive for this world. My depth pushes people away." He'd retreat to his studio for weeks, and the loneliness would become a bitter companion that seemed to prove his point. He was commissioned to paint a mural at a community center. On his first day, a group of kids gathered to watch. He felt exposed, judged through his lonely artist glasses. But he had to work. He focused on the tactile feel of the paint, the sweep of the brush, the color blending on the wall. He wasn't Amir the too sensitive artist, in that moment. He was a pair of hands making a blue sky appear. A little girl said, "How did you make it look so fluffy?" He answered without thinking, showing her how to dry brush. For that afternoon, his story was silent. He was just a person who knew how to make cloud texture, sharing it with someone who wanted to know. The connection was in the shared focus on the cloud, not on each other's personalities. He left that day not feeling drained, but energized. He realized his sensitivity wasn't a social flaw, it was his capacity for deep attention, which, when directed outward at a shared task, became a bridge, not a wall. His story was a mislabeling of his greatest gift. This leads us to a vital practice, the pause of the raw sense. When the familiar ache of loneliness arrives, and the old myth begins to narrate it, insert a pause. Ask yourself, what am I literally sensing right now, before my mind explains it? Feel the exact physical sensation, a pressure, a coolness, a tension. Hear the actual sounds. See the shapes and colors. For 10 seconds, just be a sensory creature. This pulls you out of the abstract, painful world of your story and into the concrete, neutral world of your senses. You are practicing sati, mindfulness of the body and feelings. In this raw, pre-verbal space, your personal myth holds no power. You are just alive, sensing. From this grounded place, you can then choose how to respond, rather than react from your story. Now, we must also dismantle a related story, the myth of the other people's perfect circle. We imagine others possess effortless, constant connection. This fantasy is a thief of joy and a feeder of loneliness. Buddhism points to the truth of anicca, impermanence. All phenomena are in flux, including relationships. Every circle has its fractures, its quiet moments, its misunderstandings. The couple has silent drives. The friend group has unspoken tensions. To counter the fantasy, practice reality reminders. When you see a tableau of connection, consciously add a humanizing, impermanent element in your mind. Think, they are laughing now, and they will also have moments of silence and annoyance. This isn't negative. It's equalizing. It restores the humanity of the situation, removing its unreal, shiny perfection that makes your own life seem dull by comparison. It allows you to see others as fellow navigators of complex human bonds, not as owners of a treasure you are denied. Let's conclude with a final, original story. Lena had a story, I'm a burden. My needs are too much. After an illness, she needed help getting groceries. A neighbor, Mr. Peterson, a man in his 70s she barely knew, offered. She agonized, her story screaming. The first time he drove her, she was taught with apology. He, however, talked cheerfully about the best apples for pie. In the store, he asked her opinion on coffee brands. You're younger, you know what's good. It was a simple question, but it flipped a switch. She wasn't Lena the burden. She was Lena the coffee advisor. Her expertise was needed. This tiny role dissolved her story for the entire trip. She saw that her myth of being a burden was a preemptive strike against perceived rejection. Mr. Peterson didn't see a burden, he saw a neighbor, and a chance to feel useful himself. Their connection became a mutual gift of utility and company. Lena's practice became to look for the role in any interaction, advisor, listener, appreciator, rather than entering as the needy one. She found that everyone, when given a clear, small role to play, relaxes into connection. The story of being too much faded in the face of these specific, grounded exchanges. We have begun the delicate work of noticing the glasses of our personal myth, and learning to take them off through sensory grounding and role-based connection. Next, we will explore not the absence of others, but the profound presence you can cultivate in your own company, the sacred ground of solitude. Let's continue. We've examined the stories that color our world. Now, we turn to a space often confused with loneliness, yet it is its opposite, conscious solitude. To move beyond loneliness, we must stop fleeing from being alone. We must learn to inhabit it, not as a punishment, but as a practice. In the silence of your own company, you build the inner foundations of true connection. The Buddha's path places immense value on this. It is in solitude that we stop looking for ourselves in the eyes of others and start discovering who we are when no one is watching. This isn't about becoming a hermit. It's about becoming so grounded in your own being that your relationships are no longer anchors, but sails. First, a crucial distinction. Loneliness is a sense of lack. Solitude is a sense of space. Loneliness feels like a shrinking, a hollowing out. Solitude feels like an expansion, an opening up. The same empty room can feel like a prison or a studio. The difference is not in the room, but in the relationship you have with the person in it, yourself. Psychologically, when you chronically avoid solitude, you are running from aspects of yourself you find uncomfortable. This creates a dependency on external distraction, making you vulnerable to loneliness the moment that distraction is removed. Buddhism addresses this through the practice of vipassana, insight meditation. You sit with whatever arises, boredom, restlessness, sadness, and you learn to see it not as a problem to be solved, but as a temporary guest in the field of your awareness. You cultivate a friendship with your own inner weather. This friendship is the bedrock of emotional resilience. Let me offer a new metaphor. Imagine your awareness is a vast, clear lake. Loneliness is when you are stranded on a tiny raft in the middle, feeling exposed and separate from the shore. You are fixated on the distance. Conscious solitude is the practice of gently slipping off the raft into the water. You discover you can float. You are not separate from the lake, you are in it. You feel its support, its temperature, its depth. You are in intimate contact with the very element you feared. The lake is your own conscious presence. Once you know you can float in your own being, the raft of constant external company becomes a choice, not a lifeline. You are free to swim to shore, to connect with others, from a place of ability, not desperation. Here is an original story. After a painful breakup, Leo filled every evening with noise, TV, podcasts, social media scrolling. The moment the noise stopped, the ache rushed in. One night, his internet failed. The silence felt violent. On impulse, he went to his balcony. It was a cool autumn night. He simply stood there. At first, his mind chattered wildly. Then, he began to notice the specific sound of leaves rustling in a nearby tree. He focused on that. He noticed the pattern of streetlights on the wet pavement. He felt the cool rail under his hands. He stood there for 20 minutes, just perceiving. He didn't have a profound revelation. But when he went back inside, the anxious churn in his chest had settled. He had, without knowing it, practiced a moment of true solitude. He had slipped into the lake of his senses. He realized his frantic consumption of noise wasn't comfort, it was a barrier between him and his own capacity for simple, quiet presence. He began to schedule 10 minutes of balcony time each night. No phone, no goal. Just being there. Over weeks, this tiny practice changed his relationship with himself. He became less afraid of the quiet. He started to enjoy his own company. When he eventually began dating again, he noticed a difference. He wasn't clinging to his dates to fill a void. He was curious about them. He could be silent comfortably. His cultivated solitude had made him a more present, and therefore more attractive, companion. This leads to a foundational practice, the daily sanctuary. Carve out a small, non-negotiable space of time, even 5 minutes, where you commit to being with yourself without agenda. Sit with a cup of tea and just drink it, feeling the warmth, tasting the flavor. Lie on the floor and feel your body against the ground. Stand at a window and watch the world go by. The key is to drop the role of consumer or producer. You are simply a human being. In this space, you are not waiting for anything. You are practicing sufficiency. This is a direct application of the Buddhist principle of santuthi, contentment with what is sufficient. You are telling your nervous system, in this moment, I am enough. This experience is enough. This practiced contentment becomes an inner resource that loneliness cannot easily penetrate. Now, let's deepen this. Solitude is not just about peace, it's about meeting your inner cast of characters with compassion. In the quiet, you might meet your inner critic, your anxious planner, your grieving child. The practice of conscious solitude is to greet them all not as enemies, but as parts of a whole that is you. You can say, "Ah, worry is here. Hello." This is the essence of metta, loving kindness, turned inward. By creating a non-judgmental space for these parts internally, you become less likely to project your unmet needs onto others, creating healthier external relationships. Your inner Sangha becomes harmonious, allowing you to join outer Sangha without bringing internal chaos with you. Let's see this in a final, original story. Fatima was a mother of 3 whose life was a symphony of others' needs. She loved her family, but she had lost any sense of herself as a separate being. She felt a unique loneliness, lonely for her own company. On her doctor's advice, she started locking the bathroom door for a 10-minute morning shower. But she turned it into a practice. For those 10 minutes, she was not mom. She focused only on the sensory experience. The scent of the soap, the feel of the water on her skin, the sound of it hitting the tiles. It was a daily reclaiming of her own body and senses. This tiny island of solitude became sacred. It wasn't an escape from her family, it was a return to herself. From that daily touchstone, she found she had more patience, more presence for her children and partner. She had refilled her own cup in solitude, so she had more to give in communion. She realized that her loneliness wasn't for more people. It was for the forgotten woman inside. By giving that woman 10 minutes of undivided attention, she ended the civil war within, and her external world felt more connected as a result. We have reframed solitude as the essential practice of coming home to yourself, of building an inner sanctuary so solid that your connections with others are built on the bedrock of self-intimacy, not the quicksand of need. Next, we will take this grounded self and learn the greatest social art of all. The transformative power of deep, selfless listening. Let's continue. We have built an inner sanctuary through conscious solitude. Now, we step out of that sanctuary and into the world of others. How do we bridge the gap between our cultivated inner peace and the often messy, beautiful reality of human connection? The bridge is not built of words we say, but of the quality of attention we offer. The most profound tool for cultivating Sangha, for ending existential loneliness, is not brilliant conversation, but deep, selfless listening. This is where psychological insight, Buddhist ethics, and actionable self-help converge perfectly. The Buddha included right speech in the Noble Eightfold Path, and deep listening is its silent, receptive counterpart. It is the practice through which we make others feel, and make ourselves realize, that we are not separate. First, understand the mechanism of ordinary listening. Most of the time, we listen to reply. We listen to compare, that's like my story. We listen to judge, that was unwise. We listen to fix. In all these cases, our attention is not truly on the other person. It is on our own mind's activity. This is a subtle form of self-absorption that perpetuates loneliness. Even while connecting, we are locked inside our own mental fortress. The other person feels it. They feel unheard, and you feel the disconnect. Deep listening, or what we might call Sangha listening, is the practice of dropping all that. Your only intention is to fully receive the other person's reality. You become a clear, calm pool for them to see themselves reflected in. This is an act of immense generosity and courage. Let me offer a new metaphor. Imagine every person is a unique, intricate melody. When we listen superficially, we only catch the loudest notes, and we quickly start composing our own tune in response. Deep listening is like becoming a perfect, resonant chamber. You quiet your own internal noise so completely that you can receive the full, subtle spectrum of their melody, the pauses, the soft notes, the emotional key it's written in. You don't just hear the song, you let it reverberate within you. In doing so, you validate its very existence. You tell the other person, through your silence and attention, your experience is real. I witness it. This act of witnessing is the fundamental building block of true community. It dissolves isolation on both sides. Here is an original story. Ben was a manager who dreaded one-on-one meetings. He saw them as problems to solve. He'd listen just enough to formulate advice, then spend the rest of the time talking. His team felt micromanaged and disconnected. After a workshop, he decided to try an experiment in one meeting. His only goal, to not give any advice. When his employee, Sarah, started talking about a project delay, Ben physically put his pen down. He said, "Tell me more about that." And then he just listened. He noticed the tension in her shoulders, the frustration in her pauses. He nodded. He said, "That sounds incredibly frustrating." He asked, "What's the most challenging part for you right now?" For 15 minutes, he just received. He didn't solve anything. At the end, Sarah sat back, exhaled deeply, and said, "Thank you. Just talking it through helped me see what I need to do." Ben was stunned. He hadn't done anything, yet he had facilitated more progress than in any previous meeting. More importantly, he felt a genuine human connection that his managerial, problem-solving, had always blocked. He realized his drive to fix was often a barrier to true contact. By practicing receptive listening, he had created a moment of real Sangha, a shared space of understanding. His loneliness in his role of the boss dissipated because he had found a way to be human with his team. This leads to a transformative practice, the 3-breath pause. When someone is speaking to you, especially about something meaningful, consciously decide to take 3 slow, silent breaths after they finish before you say anything. In that pause, let their words settle. Resist the urge to formulate your response. Use the breaths to clear a space of pure reception. Often, what arises after that pause is not your pre-planned comment, but a truer response, a deeper question, a simple acknowledgement of feeling or comfortable silence. This practice trains you in samadhi, concentration and calm, applied directly to relationship. It breaks the knee-jerk pattern of conversational self-interest and opens a door to genuine meeting. Now, let's deepen this with a Buddhist principle, deep listening as a form of dana, generosity. The greatest gift you can give is your attention, because it is the gift of your life, your time, your consciousness, stripped of ego. When you listen deeply, you are practicing the perfection of generosity. You are giving away your self-concern. This is why it feels so good for both people. It is a mutually enriching exchange that transcends transaction. The speaker feels the gift of being received. The listener experiences the joy of selfless giving. Loneliness cannot survive in such an exchange because both parties are actively participating in the dissolution of their separate selves. They are, for a moment, a single circuit of giving and receiving. Let's see this in a final, original story. Mrs. Chen was an elderly woman in an assisted living home. She had outlived most friends and family, and her primary company was a stream of cheerful, busy caregivers who did tasks but rarely saw her. She felt profoundly lonely in a crowd of care. A new volunteer, a quiet young man named Leo, was assigned to read to her. The first day, he read a page and then paused. Mrs. Chen murmured, "That character reminds me of my brother." Instead of saying, "That's nice," and continuing to read, Leo closed the book. He turned his chair slightly toward her. "What was your brother like?" he asked. And then he listened. He listened as she wandered through memories, some sharp, some foggy. He didn't correct her. He didn't rush her. He just listened, his full attention on her face. For 20 minutes, she talked. When she finished, she looked at him, really looked at him, and her eyes welled up. "No one has let me talk about him in years," she said. "Thank you for remembering him with me." In that moment, Leo wasn't a volunteer providing a service. He was a human being helping another human being bear witness to a life. He had practiced deep listening as dana. He had given her the experience of being a real person with a history, not just a patient. And in return, he received a profound lesson in the power of presence. Their weekly sessions became the highlight of both their weeks, not because of the books, but because of the sacred space of listening they co-created. It was a perfect, miniature Sangha of two. We have seen that deep listening is the active mechanism of Sangha. It is how we operationalize interconnection. Next, we must address a common obstacle: what happens when we try to connect and are met with rejection, indifference, or conflict? How do we maintain our open heart when the world seems to shut doors? We will explore the Buddhist art of bringing compassion to the very things that seem to block our connection. Let's continue. We've learned to listen, to build bridges of attention. But the path of connection is not a smooth hallway of open doors. It is a landscape where doors sometimes stay shut, where words fall flat, where we feel rebuffed or simply invisible. This is the testing ground. If our quest for Sangha collapses here, we retreat back into the fortress of loneliness, walls thicker than before. But Buddhist wisdom offers a radically different approach. It asks us to see rejection, indifference, and conflict not as proof that connection is impossible, but as integral parts of the relational field itself. They are not obstacles to the path, they are the path. Our practice now is to learn the art of connecting to disconnection itself, with compassion. This is where our inner sanctuary meets the rough weather of the world. First, a psychological reframe. When faced with social rejection or friction, our nervous system often reads it as a threat to survival, an ancient echo from our tribal past. We react with fight, flight, or freeze. This is the ego in its rawest form, scrambling to protect the illusion of a separate, vulnerable self. The pain is real. But the Buddha's teaching on dukkha reminds us that suffering is not just the pain itself, but our resistance to it, our story about it. This means I am unworthy. The practice is to feel the sting without buying the story. To create a space between the social event and our catastrophic interpretation. This space is the birthplace of resilience and true compassion. Let me offer a new metaphor. Imagine you are learning to sail. The ocean of human relations has calm waters and rough storms. Loneliness is like being marooned on a raft, terrified of every wave, believing each one will destroy you. The practice of mindful relationship is to build a sturdy boat, your inner stability. When a wave of rejection hits, it rocks the boat. It might even take on some water. But you learn it won't sink you. You learn to adjust the sails, to ride it out. You start to understand waves are not personal attacks, they are part of the ocean's nature. Some waves are caused by distant storms in another person's life that have nothing to do with you. Your job is not to stop the waves, but to learn the skill of sailing through them. This skill is equanimity, upekkha, one of the sublime abidings. It is a calm, abiding heart in the midst of the world's push and pull. Here is an original story. Aisha was excited about her new book club. At the first meeting, she shared an idea about the novel's theme. There was a brief, awkward silence, then the conversation moved on as if she hadn't spoken. The old, familiar wave crashed over her. They think your idea is stupid. You don't belong here. She spent the rest of the evening in silent retreat, her inner critic narrating her exclusion. The following month, she almost didn't go. But she remembered the metaphor of the wave. She decided her goal wouldn't be to be heard, but to observe the wave without drowning in it. She went. When a similar moment occurred, her comment briefly overlooked, she noticed the physical sensation, a hot flush, a tight chest. Instead of following it into a story, she simply breathed into the tightness. She stayed present. Later, another member, Maya, leaned over and said, "I actually loved your point last month about the symbolism. I meant to say something." The wave receded, and Aisha saw the truth. The initial silence hadn't been a rejection, it was just the group's social dynamic, a momentary glitch. By not fleeing the wave, by staying in her boat, she was present for the connection that eventually came. She learned that perceived disconnection is often just a time delay, a misalignment, not a permanent state. Her ability to tolerate the temporary discomfort without narrative had allowed the real connection to find its moment. This leads to a vital practice, the compassionate pause for the self. When you feel the slap of rejection or the chill of indifference, before reacting or retreating, place a hand on your heart. Take 3 breaths. Acknowledge the hurt with kindness. This is a moment of suffering. It's okay. It's human. This is self-compassion, a direct application of karuna, compassion, toward yourself. It soothes the threatened nervous system. It tells the primal brain, we are safe. We can handle this. From this stabilized place, you can then choose a wise response, or choose no response at all. You break the automatic cycle of pain leading to thicker walls. Now, let's extend this compassion outward, to the source of the friction. This is advanced but liberating work. Buddhism teaches that hurt people hurt people. Indifference is often overwhelm. Rejection is often another person's fear. When someone acts in a way that isolates you, they are usually acting from their own sense of isolation or threat. This doesn't excuse poor behavior, but it reframes it. It allows you to see the suffering in the other person, not just the offense against you. You can practice thinking. They, too, are acting from a place of their own pain. This doesn't mean you have to subject yourself to abuse. It means you can protect your boundaries without hardening your heart. You can say no or walk away, but you do so with pity for their constricted state, not with hatred for yours. This is how you keep your own heart open for connection, even when specific connections fail. Let's see this in a final, original story. Mark shared a wall with a neighbor who played loud, aggressive music late into the night. Every thumping bass note felt like a personal assault, reinforcing Mark's feeling of being alone and powerless in his own home. Anger and resentment built a fortress around him. One day, he saw the neighbor struggling to get a large package up the stairs. The old, resentful Mark would have looked away. But the practicing Mark paused. He walked over and wordlessly took the other end of the box. They hauled it up. The neighbor, surprised, muttered, "Thanks. Bad back." Mark simply nodded. Later that week, the music was a bit lower. Not perfect, but lower. Mark realized his neighbor wasn't a monster, he was just a guy, maybe in pain, maybe lonely, filling his space with sound. By offering a moment of unprompted help, Mark had changed the energy. He hadn't condoned the behavior, but he had seen the human behind it. He stopped taking the noise personally. His own loneliness in his apartment lessened because he was no longer in a silent war with an enemy. He had connected to the disconnection, and in doing so, had loosened its grip. He learned that sometimes, the bridge across a chasm isn't built by both people meeting in the middle, but by one person deciding to stop throwing stones from their side. We have learned to meet the rough edges of relationship not as catastrophic failures, but as waves to navigate with self-compassion and insight into shared suffering. Next, we will gather all we've practiced and look at the ultimate expression of Sangha, how to become a living, breathing source of connection for a fragmented world, fulfilling the deepest purpose of the Buddhist path. We have navigated the inner and outer landscapes of connection. Now we reach the heart of the matter. Integration. The final step beyond loneliness is not a technique, but an identity. It is the shift from seeking Sangha to being Sangha. To move from a person who feels alone to a person who is a living source of connection. This is the practical culmination of the Buddha's path. Awakening is not a private ecstasy, it is a relational quality. It is the embodiment of praditya samutpada, dependent origination, in your posture, your gaze, your every interaction. You stop trying to plug your sense of lack into others, and you start functioning as an open node in the network, receiving and transmitting presence. Psychologically, this addresses the core of existential anxiety, the fear that we do not matter. When your daily intention is to be a benefit, that fear dissolves. You matter by design. The Buddhist framework calls this bodhicitta, the awakened heart-mind that seeks enlightenment for the sake of all beings. You don't need to be a saint. You simply need to let your smallest actions be guided by a simple question: could this be helpful? This reorients your entire life from inward lack to outward flow. And in that flow, you find you are never alone, because you are part of a current that includes all life. Let me offer a new metaphor. Imagine your true nature is like a clear mountain spring. Loneliness is the experience of that spring being blocked by rocks of self-concern, stagnation setting in. The practices we've explored, solitude, listening, compassion, are the careful removal of those rocks. But the final step is simply to let the water flow downhill, naturally. It doesn't ask, will the ground appreciate me? It simply follows its nature to nourish. It becomes a stream, joining other streams. You are that spring. Your nature is to connect, to nourish. When you stop obstructing yourself with stories and fear, your innate connectedness flows effortlessly. You become a tributary to the great river of Sangha. An original story. Samir worked as a nighttime custodian in a large office building. For years, he moved through the empty, echoing spaces feeling like a ghost. One winter night, he found a young intern, Leah, asleep at her desk, exhausted and stressed. The old Samir would have quietly cleaned around her. But that night, he made a cup of tea from the kitchenette and placed it quietly on a coaster near her, then moved on. He didn't wake her. He simply left a signal of care. The next night, he found a post-it on his cleaning cart: "Thank you for the tea. Leah in accounting." That tiny exchange changed Samir's entire relationship to his job. He began a practice of invisible stewardship. He'd neatly align the perpetually messy pile of magazines in the lobby. He'd water a drooping office plant. He left no notes, sought no credit. He became the gentle, unseen caretaker of the building's ecosystem. He was no longer a ghost, he was a guardian. His profound loneliness vanished because he had found his function, to be a benevolent presence in the shared space. He had become Sangha for people who never knew his name. In giving connection anonymously, he experienced its purest form. This leads to the practice of anonymous benefaction. Once a day, perform a small, kind act without any possibility of recognition or reward. Pay for the coffee of the person behind you in the drive-thru. Leave a book you finished on a park bench with a note, "For you." Pick up litter in your apartment building hallway. The key is the anonymity. It severs the connection between the act and your ego's need for validation. You are practicing pure dana, generosity. This trains your brain to derive joy from the act of giving itself, reinforcing your identity as part of a giving network, not an isolated node in need. Now, we deepen this with a foundational Buddhist view. Sangha as a duty, not a desire. We began by desiring connection to soothe our ache. We end by seeing the offering of connection as our simple human duty, like a tree offering oxygen. When you wake up, you can set this intention: today, may I be a place of refuge. May my presence be harmless and helpful. This isn't a heavy burden. It's a light orientation. It means when you interact with a customer service agent, you see a person and offer patience. When you pass someone on the street, you hold a silent wish for their well-being. You are fulfilling your role in the interconnected whole. The aching desire to get connection is replaced by the peaceful commitment to be connective tissue. In this, you find a satisfaction deeper than any social validation, because it is aligned with the fundamental truth of how things are. A final, original story. A retired teacher, Grace, felt obsolete and lonely. She started visiting the local laundromat, not with laundry, but with a novel to read. She'd sit among the whirring machines. One day, a young mother, struggling with a toddler and a mountain of clothes, looked near tears. Grace didn't offer advice. She simply caught the toddler's eye and made a silly face. The child giggled. The mother sighed with relief. A connection was made in a glance. Grace began showing up weekly. She became the laundromat lady. She'd fold a stray sock for someone, hold a baby for a moment, or simply offer a warm smile. She didn't form deep bonds. She provided a steady, gentle, human presence in a transient, stressful space. She became the laundromat's unofficial grandmother, its embodied Sangha. Her loneliness was replaced by a profound sense of usefulness. She had planted herself in a place of shared human necessity and simply bloomed where she was planted. She realized that to be Sangha, you don't need a temple or a title. You just need to show up, consistently and kindly, in the middle of life's mundane mess, and be a calm, recognizing presence. This is the essence: you become the connection you seek. You stop looking for the lantern in the dark and realize you are holding the match. The final part will weave all of this into a seamless tapestry. A way of moving through the world that renders the old story of loneliness obsolete, not because you are never alone, but because you are never separate. This is our final integration. We have journeyed from the ache of separation to the understanding that we are, by nature, connection itself. The wisdom of the Buddha and the insights of psychology converge on a single, liberating point: loneliness is not your truth, it is a signpost pointing toward your truth. It is the call of the wave for the ocean, of the candle for the constellation, of the spring for the stream. To live beyond loneliness is to answer that call not by grasping outward, but by relaxing inward into the interconnected reality you have always inhabited. Let's bring this home. Your practice is no longer a set of techniques, but a way of being. It is the continuous, gentle remembrance that you are a vital, conscious strand in the web of life. In the morning, you wake not as a separate self facing a world of others, but as a unique expression of life, preparing to meet other expressions. You brush your teeth with water that has cycled through continents. You eat food that is literally sunlight and soil transformed. You step outside into air shared with all breathing things. This is not poetry. This is your daily, lived Sangha. When you walk down the street, you are walking through a field of potential connection. Each person you pass is a universe of experience. Your simple, silent recognition of their humanity, even if just a softening behind your eyes, is an act of Sangha. Holding the door, making patient eye contact, these are the rituals of your new temple, the shared world. Your inner sanctuary, built in solitude, now has no walls. It extends as far as your attention does. When friction arises, you see the shared pain behind it. When you feel the old sting of rejection, you comfort the hurt place within while knowing it is a temporary storm in the vast sky of your awareness. You are the sailor who knows the ocean now, who trusts the buoyancy of your own boat. And in your quiet moments, you know that your purpose is woven into the fabric of the ordinary. You are here to be a beneficial presence. To be the steady hand, the listening ear, the unseen gardener of communal spaces. In this, you are never useless, never irrelevant. You are a necessary participant in the great, unfolding story of life remembering itself. So, the next time you feel the familiar hollow whisper of loneliness, meet it differently. Don't panic. Don't storytell. Pause. Feel your feet on the ground, your connection to the earth. Feel your breath, your exchange with the atmosphere. Look around and find one thing you are in clear relationship with, the light, a sound, an object. You are instantly, undeniably, connected. Then, from that grounded place, ask the wiser question, how may I be a source of connection here? Perhaps it's a smile sent across a room. A kind thought for a stranger. The patient folding of your own laundry. In that shift, from I lack to I may contribute, you step out of the illusion of separation and into your true role as a creator of Sangha. You are not a lonely seeker. You are Sangha, walking. You are community, embodied. You are the answer to your own deepest call. The temple was never a distant place. Monk's temple is here, in the awareness you bring to this very moment, and the next, and the next. A temple built not of wood and stone, but of attention and intention. You belong to it, and it belongs to all. Welcome home.